Since January, only one Russian tanker of oil has made it to Cuba. I was in conversations with the ambassadors from Mexico and some other places, and I know other countries in Latin America trying to figure out how to get oil there. But it is a crisis beyond imagination.
Listen to this. Democrat Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal admits she is speaking with foreign ambassadors about getting oil into Cuba, despite the fact that the U.S. has sanctions on that country currently. Let's bring in Florida Senator Ashley Moody joining me live now from Florida. Senator, I'll get your response to this because this is a clear undermining of U.S. foreign policy.
Yeah, and it further demonstrates the cancer that the Democratic Party has now, this anti-American contingent that thinks that this is part of their job to work against the policy of the United States. I mean, I think there needs to be a full investigation, not only by DOJ and the State Department, but the ethics committees within the House at whether or not she has crossed a serious line of working with foreign diplomats to conspire against American sanctions and American foreign policy. I mean, this is really new territory. And set that aside for a moment. As the Florida senator, I'm the newest member of the United States Senate from the state of Florida, where we have a large population of Cuban Americans who still have family members there who are oppressed. Many have been tortured and imprisoned. I mean, I cannot believe that they would so boldly brag about trying to help a communist regime. It's a slap in the face to the Cubans here in America, those that really are pushing for freedom for those in Cuba.
I do wonder what could happen to her and people like her, because I think they're also trying to plan another trip to Cuba as well, a delegation to take to the island. Because imagine if U.S. lawmakers elected by the American people were to try to work behind the scenes to get, let's say, oil to China at the same time that the president is heading over to China to cut a deal with Xi. And trying to push his own agenda. It just feels very strange in this moment.
Well, that's becoming the Democratic. This is not the Democratic Party we knew even just a few decades ago. I mean, half the Democrats in the House are in this progressive caucus. I mean, they proudly are working against the United States of America and what it was built on. They are proudly supporting Communist Party agenda. They are boldly declaring that socialism is great. I mean, this is a whole new frontier that we that have gone up to Washington to serve on behalf of American citizens are having to confront. I can tell you, it drives me every day as Florida's newest U.S. Senator in the push to make and continue this, the United States of America to be the greatest country on earth. And that is a country that stands against tyranny and communism and for freedom and for the American people.
Okay, I want to turn to this now, get your take on federal officials announcing telling Fox News that they are in talks to perhaps close Alligator Alcatraz. We all remember when this was opened. This is a statement from Florida. Since its inception, Alligator Alcatraz has processed over 21,000 illegal aliens for deportation. The facility's purpose was to provide Florida and the Trump administration with a rapid, temporary solution for 4 years of Biden's open border invasion. Needless to say, Alligator Alcatraz was a massive success. I'll get your response to that because it was never meant to be a permanent solution, and it seems like the president has secured the border.
Yeah, so if you'll remember back when the Biden administration launched an all-out war against law and order and safety, I was the Attorney General in Florida. Florida was the first to bring suit against the Biden administration when they started releasing people into the interior that were here illegally committing crimes against American communities. We sued the Biden administration. We fought back aggressively. And it was no surprise that when President Trump was returned to office, we were the first state that every single sheriff's office signed up to help the federal government go back in and try to course correct and remove some of these dangerous people from our community. So, of course, the governor and others immediately looked for ways how we could help support that mission. And since then, there have been other detention alternatives opened. And I think you're hearing from Florida officials that they feel it's served its purpose and we can now move on to more permanent structures.
I want to get your take on this, too. You're a former AG of Florida. Your name was rumored to be a possible replacement for Pam Bondi, the former AG. President Barack Obama raising a lot of eyebrows over his comments about the Trump DOJ, saying that it's been politicized. Like, you listen to this.
That I followed even though they weren't law. And I want us, we're going to have to do some work to return to this basic norm, and we probably now have to codify it. The White House shouldn't be able to direct the Attorney General to go around prosecuting whoever the president wants to prosecute. The idea is that the Attorney General is the people's lawyer. It's not the president's consigliere.
So he wants to return it to the basic norm, Senator, and then codify it. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it reminds me of that term, misdirection. I mean, that's the biggest self-serving smokescreen I've ever heard. Did he forget that he met with intelligence and law enforcement to discuss generating an investigation on the Russia hoax that was made up? And, Hillary's team all but admitted they had pushed that and leaked that to the media. I mean, listen, if you go out and you say, okay, I don't like a person and I'm going to target them and I'm going to craft charges against them, come up with something because I don't like them, okay, that's weaponization. But if you're coming in like the Trump administration and saying, okay, how do we go back and address all that was wrong under the Biden administration and how they used the departments to go after a candidate, one that the American people supported, I mean, that's insane. So they're trying to label as weaponization going back and holding people accountable when they did just that.
Yeah.
That is a smokescreen. That is trying to confuse the American people. And I am proud that you are calling that out.
Yeah, they never want to talk about Russiagate. They never want to talk about, what happened with going after Catholics and Christians. They don't want to talk about any of that. They want to talk about what's happening with President Trump now. Senator Moody, always great to have you. Have a great weekend.
Great to be with you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.